Okay, it is the top of the hour, so we are going to get started. Welcome everyone to the Introduction to Jira Align webinar. Over the next hour, we are going to not only be talking about Jira Align, but we are going to jump into a Jira Align instance and take a look at the tool firsthand. Before we get started with all of that good stuff, I would like to first introduce myself. My name is Vicki Bodorf. I am a business process consultant specializing in Jira Align with XPM, which is a platinum solutions partner with Atlassian. I'm going to talk more about who we are and what we do here at XPM and what opportunities we have for you later on in this presentation. But for now, let's talk about what we are going to cover today. We're just about to wrap up this introduction, and then we're going to talk about some concepts through a few more slides. I try and get through the slides pretty quickly. I know they aren't the most engaging part of the hour, but I do think they are important concepts to make sure we all are aware of before we jump into the live demonstration. During that demonstration, I'm going to focus on some of the highlights of the tool. You will hear me say several times throughout this hour that Jira Align is a really large tool. And because of that, it is pretty much impossible to cover everything in the tool or everything that the tool has to offer in just an hour. If at the end of this demonstration, you'd like a more in-depth demonstration, please feel free to reach out to us. We're always happy to set that up. At the end of the hour, we will have some Q&A time. If you have any questions throughout this presentation, please do dump them in the Q&A panel in Zoom, and I will get to those at the end of the hour and hopefully have some time to throw in some FAQs as well. With that, let's talk about our first concept, which is really the positioning of Jira Align. Jira Align is designed for organizations who have implemented or in the process of implementing a framework for scaled agile, such as SAFe or the Spotify model. We found that organizations typically succeed most with Jira Align when they have implemented at least one program increment or PI, or you might call this quarterly increment in your organization from a process perspective. And we always recommend this because first, it is often difficult for users to understand a brand new process and a brand new tool at the same time. It can be very overwhelming for them. And second, because once we have some of that process in place, it just eases the implementation of the tool. It helps us understand what we are configuring. It helps us make decisions easier and quicker when we are configuring Jira Align, and it just overall eases that implementation path. Like I mentioned, Jira Align is a large-scale tool, and it is meant for large enterprises. Atlassian has recommended that Jira Align is really meant for organizations that have at least 500 developers. And because it is this large-scale tool, it does come at a higher price point than other Atlassian tools like Jira. We do believe that smaller organizations may struggle with either the scale of the tool, the price point, or potentially both. Jira Align just may not be the best fit for those smaller organizations. If you are from a smaller organization, though, please do stay on. There are several other opportunities within the Atlassian ecosystem to help you along your scale journey as you make your way towards a tool like Jira Align. And I will talk more about those and what opportunities we have here at XPM surrounding those in just a couple more slides. As we will see today, Jira Align really can handle the planning of our work and visualization of that work from the C-suite all the way down to the agile teams. It is this robust tool that helps us align work across the enterprise. Scale planning is one of the main concepts that plays into Jira Align. It is what Jira Align really does help us with. This image is very busy, but I actually like it because it really does show a lot of the complexities that go into planning at scale. If you've been to any type of scale training, whether it's SAFe or another model, you've probably seen something similar, or maybe even this exact diagram that really is just pointing out all of the complex moving parts that we are working with whenever we are doing planning at scale. I do want to walk through these 4 boxes just briefly. When we get into the tool, what you will see is that Jira Align helps us with all of these areas. So I like to first talk about them kind of conceptually, and then we'll see how that plays out in the tool. Starting in box 4 here, which is by no means the least important box, it is the sprint planning or the team level box. This is the teams that are doing the work. They are working in their sprints, they are planning out their stories, estimating those, and working towards completing our features, which is what we have in box 3. This is what we usually refer to as that program level or that team of teams level. If you are participating in SAFe, this is the Agile release train level. And here we are working with our features. We are planning those out through our PI planning event or our big room planning. And we are breaking those down into our stories throughout that event as well. Above that, we then have our portfolio level. This is where we are dealing with our portfolio epics. We are estimating, prioritizing, assigning budgets to these epics. And again, these epics are typically work items that may take multiple quarters, potentially multiple years to complete. We also have a product management area in both scaled planning and also in Jira Align. This is that more product-centric view of what our organization is doing as a whole. As you can see, starting a scaled Agile or transformation or scaling Agile in your organization really can be this long and complex undertaking. While tools are never going to define or fix our process, where they play into this is they're an invaluable piece of the puzzle that helps us plan, track, and visualize our work throughout this scaling journey. Now let's go ahead and talk about how Jira Align handles this complexity of scaled planning. What Jira Align really helps us with is syncing people, the work they do, and time across the enterprise. And we'll be able to easily go from that team level all the way up to that top enterprise C-suite level within Jira Align. Jira Align also offers product management, strategic portfolio, and scaled development modules to really help us get that cross-team and cross-functional collaboration within the same tool. We're also able to analyze our data and information in real time as updates are being made. And finally, Jira Align ultimately does become the single source of truth when it comes to team execution, team planning, program and portfolio planning, and much more. Also, what you see in this diagram is that Jira Align really is meant to sit with or interact with at least one Jira software instance or potentially another team planning tool. Little bit of history with this. Jira Align used to be called AgileCraft, and a few years ago, it was acquired by Atlassian and turned into Jira Align. When it was AgileCraft, though, it was meant to be a full stack tool where everyone was operating within the same tool. When Atlassian acquired AgileCraft and turned it into Jira Align, they then shifted it to really utilize Jira software as that team level tool. And Jira software is really great with a lot of Agile pieces to it of the Agile boards, our Scrum and Kanban boards, our dashboards, filters, etc. All of that really lends itself to that Agile team layer where we are trying to execute and plan out those stories. When we start to scale above that layer, though, into the program, solution, portfolio, and enterprise layer, that is where we really need a tool that is going to help facilitate the alignment throughout our organization at all of these various layers of scale and through the various activities represented on this diagram. And that is what we are going to see with Jira Align today. So when we jump into the tool, you will see again how we are playing with all of these pieces within the tool. As Jira Align helps us plan and execute our work across the enterprises, it does use those three hierarchies I just mentioned of people, work, and time. Sometimes the slide can be a little overwhelming. There's a lot on it, but if you really think about the work you do and the planning that you do at your organization, it always boils down to these three pieces of people, the work they are doing, and what time box they are doing that work in. So I do like to walk through this slide just for anybody who maybe isn't familiar with some of these terms before we jump in the tool, so you can really understand what levels we are working with when we jump into the tool. Starting with the people over here on the left in the white words here, we do start up at the enterprises, that C-suite level. We break that down into our portfolio, potentially a solution layer, into our program, again, that team of teams layer, down into that Agile team. And where we take this even a step further with our tooling, such as Jira Software, Jira Align, is depending on which level of this hierarchy you are sitting at, depends on what you are going to be able to do within these tools, what work items you're going to be able to create, what you are going to be able to manage and visualize within the tools. Over on the right-hand side here in the orange words, we do have our work. So this is the work that people are doing. And again, at each layer of those people, we have different work items. At the top, we're talking about our strategy, that multi-year plan for our organization. That gets broken down into our themes. It could be a year-long, multi-year-long work item. And then whenever we get down into the portfolio layer, we're talking about our epics and our initiatives, potentially our capabilities. And below that, we then have our features at that program team of team level. And then we have our stories and tasks at the Agile team level. Again, at each of these levels, we're working with different pieces of time. So at the strategy level, we're talking about multi-year, that strategic snapshot. Then we break down into our quarterly or program increments, and we have our sprints and releases at the team level. We also have this sort of secret fourth hierarchy in Jira Align, which is the business vectors. We're going to be able to monitor things like product management, our objectives and key results, value streams, domains, and budgets within the tool as well. All right. Let's briefly talk about some of the offerings that we have with Jira Align. There are two editions of Jira Align, a standard and an enterprise edition. The enterprise edition is what we see customers going with most frequently because it does come with a sandbox, which is super helpful when we're making all of those configuration and implementation decisions. There are two add-ons for Jira Align currently. There's a time tracking add-on if you need more robust time tracking. And there's also an Enterprise Insights add-on. This is essentially a data lake that collects a lot of information from Jira Align and allows you to analyze your data even further. As for some new and coming updates, over the last couple of months, Atlassian has had a lot of really good feature releases. They've updated a lot of the API functionality, what is available through the API. They are working to improve OKRs. We saw a glimpse of this a couple months ago, but they should be rolling out that full functionality in the next couple of months. They've also updated WSJF and estimation. WSJF is now, or weighted shortest job first, is now the prioritization model within Jira Align, and just some small updates to estimation conversions. And we are expecting some UI updates is what we're getting from Atlassian. We should be seeing some UI updates this year as well. Now that we've talked about really the concepts of Jira Align, it often leads us to the discussion of, okay, how do I actually implement this? There's a typical standard process that you'll see with pretty much any partner who's helping you implement Jira Align. Usually we do start with just a single program or Agile release train, and we implement this over 3 to 6 months, just depending on how quickly you're able to move. The green boxes down here do represent the general phases that we go through. There's always a planning phase. Working with a scaled tool means that we have to coordinate a lot of people at a lot of levels. Then we will jump into our discovery phase, learning how you work so we can implement that in the tool, configuring, training your users. And then we're going to get into that PI planning event where you'll actually utilize the tool. Throughout this, we're going to be validating and updating any changes, and then we can start rolling it out to more programs and expanding into that portfolio layer after that initial implementation. As I mentioned earlier, I do want to just briefly talk about some other Atlassian tools that can help you with your scaling. If you've listened to all of this and you're thinking maybe Jira Align just isn't quite right for you at this time, I always like to point out that Advanced Roadmaps is an Atlassian tool that can also help you with scaling, especially at the beginning stages. As the name suggests, this is a road mapping tool that can be used to help you scale and track your work and plan it. And it does come included in Jira Cloud Premium and Enterprise instances, as well as data center instances. And what Advanced Roadmaps is really good at is helping us grow our Agile organizations that need that visibility, shared focus, and accurate delivery across multiple teams. It also allows us to align our work to those higher level initiatives and get that roll up of information as well. As you'll see today, Jira Align does have some more robust capabilities around that higher level planning and alignment. But if you were just starting on your scaled journey, Advanced Roadmaps can be really helpful. And even if you're already in Jira Align, Advanced Roadmaps can be a great tool for those team members who are working mostly in Jira software. If this is a topic you're interested in, we actually do have another free webinar called introduction to portfolio management in Jira. And our coordinators will send a link to that in the chat. Feel free to check it out. We go a bit more in depth into advanced roadmaps during that webinar. All right, with that, we'll be done with the slides for now. We are going to jump into a Jira Align instance. As I am signing in here, I always like to mention that Jira Align is a cloud-based tool. It can interact or be implemented into your current SSO policy. We'll just give it a second here. Oops. Go back to the home page. Whenever I start talking about Jira Align, I do like to start with talking about the navigation of the tool for two reasons. First, this is an introduction webinar, so some people may have shown up wanting to get some quick tips on how to better use Jira Align. And second, because right from the navigation, you are going to see how this tool is aligned around those layers of scale. So just the organization of the tool is lending itself to that scaled planning diagram that we were just looking at. The way we navigate Jira Align is a bit different than some of our other Atlassian tools. The main navigation menu is over here on the left in this blue bar. The first button takes us to our home page, which is what you see now. We, of course, have our user menu, some settings you can update for yourself. I'm going to skip past the magnifying glass and the star for just a moment. And I'm going to jump down to this web. And this is where we start to get right into those layers of scale. We are looking at the enterprise layer here. And if you'll remember from that hierarchy slide, at that enterprise layer, we are talking about strategy. So here we are seeing things like the strategy room, the strategy backlog, the strategy tree. This is for that upper level management who's setting that multi-year outlook and strategy for our organization. Underneath this, we then jump into the portfolio layer. This is where we're working again with those themes and those epics. We are managing those in our backlog. We have a lot of portfolio related activities at this layer. We also may have a solution layer. This isn't always necessary, both in the tool and process-wise, but if you are utilizing a solution train within your organization, we are able to implement that in the tool as well. The next layer is that team of teams layer, that program layer. Here we have our features. We have our program board. This is one of the hot items in Jira Align. We are going to take a look at this just in a moment. And then we do have our team layer. Again, teams are meant to be working in Jira software, but that information does sync over to Jira Align, and it does allow us to visualize that information here as well. We also have that product management layer. So just depending on how you're organized around your programs and portfolios, et cetera, we are going to be able to implement this product area if it's needed to get kind of that more product-centric view. At the bottom here, we do have reports, which we are going to jump into in a bit. But actually, let's jump to the top. I'll come back to this. The next piece I do like to talk about is just the magnifying glass and the favorite star here. This magnifying glass does search this menu. As I was jumping through these menus, you probably started to see that there's a lot of information at every layer of scale. So first of all, we are able to toggle these areas on and off. We always like to start with just the necessities and then grow into and mature into these other areas. But there still can be a lot even after we filtered that down. So if you are new to Jira Align, always check out this search bar because you can just search something like the program board. And if you can type it better than I can, you will start to see that option here. You can also favorite areas of the tool. So if you're constantly going to a couple of visualizations, you can favorite those to really get to those quickly. Next, let's talk about the context bar, which is this gray bar up here at the top. This is also sometimes called the configuration bar. This bar serves as a giant filter across our instance here. And what that means is we can select the exact slice of information that we want to visualize. And then as we click through those various visualizations from the blue menu, it will be filtered based on the data that falls into the selections that we've made. So first we do pick that people layer, the layer of scale we are talking about. We have our portfolios, our programs, our teams here. We see the full enterprise breakdown over here on the right as well. We can select our specific slice of time, specific program increments, specific time slices here. We can also add in things like our releases, our products, our organization structure, and there's even some more advanced configurations, and you can save these as well to quickly navigate to specific selections. Continuing on this bar, just a couple more cool features of the tool. There's this checklist capability. This is a really nice way to help people who are new to the process and new to the tool, make sure they're going through the proper steps. So you can choose where these show up in the tool. They can be shared across the instance. They can be individual checklists, but just can be really useful in helping people understand what they're meant to do. On that thought of understanding what to do, there's also some built-in training simulations from Atlassian. So if you turn these on, these can be useful for new users as well. There are some in-app notifications with the notification bell. And then this search bar here is actually a work item search. So whenever we are looking for a specific item, we can put in the hashtag or octothorpe, and we can type in a number, and it will just show up which work items, or the work items will be split between each type of work item here. This blue create button, like our other Atlassian tools you may be familiar with, is how we create items. And right here, again, you can see just all the different types of items we can create within Jira Align. Down at the bottom here, this help button is a contextual help button. This is one of my favorite pieces of the tool. As we're implementing this with our customers, it's a very useful piece. And that is because when I say it's contextual, it means that it changes depending on what screen you're on. So here on the home screen, we're just seeing the latest release notes, but in the program board, for example, we'd see documentation on the program board. If we click on a specific report, it's going to show us the documentation on that report. And admins, if you're on an admin screen, it even shows you admin documentation as well. So it's a really useful piece. With the tool being so large, it is hard to remember every little thing about it, especially when you're new to it. This is a really helpful piece of the tool that can help you along your journey. All right. The last thing I like to mention is just one of the administrative functions, and it's that the terminology in Jira Align is customizable. So if, as I've been saying a bunch of words and clicking on a bunch of buttons, if you currently use Jira Align and you're noticing that some of the things are named differently, it's because all of these terms back here in the back end are customizable. So just keep that in mind if you're thinking that a button isn't named properly or not using the right term. It's just been customized in your instance. We try to keep ours pretty up to date with the SAFe model and just kind of try and make that translation as we go along. All right. That is it for the navigation. Hopefully you see that just right from the very get-go of this tool, we are looking at these layers of scale. It is organized around this scaling idea. As we go through this demo, I like to center this around really the two overarching uses of Jira Align, which is the strategic top-down planning and the visualization of work in progress that rolls up from that agile team layer to the other layers of scale. So starting with that top-down planning portion, I like to start at the top. Looking at the strategy room in the enterprise layer. I need to select a quick snapshot here. And this is, again, that strategy room, looking at our strategy layer. We are going to right here see our mission, vision, and values. Why do we exist? What are we striving for? Then we see our strategy pyramid. This is showing us the breakdown. How does that mission break down into our themes, our epics, our features, our objectives, and our goals? We have an OKR heat map here. Here we can see we're not doing so hot on our OKRs. We maybe need to have a meeting. Let's figure out how we can improve these scores. And we can see a breakdown of the OKR tree as well. On the top right, we then just see some quick snapshots. How's our execution against our outcomes going? And what's our overall snapshot progress? Are we accepting our themes, our epics, our features? How many of each of these items, along with stories and dependencies, do we have? Next, I like to talk about, again, the top-down planning from the backlog. So the Jira Align backlog works similar to other backlogs you may be familiar with. And it does have various layers of scale here. So let me first make the right selection. Right here on this selection, we can jump to the various layers of scale looking at this backlog. So starting with the theme backlog, here we are able to visualize those specific themes. And I'm just going to talk about really the quick functionality of the tool. In the backlog, you can see two layers. So here again, we're able to visualize that theme and what are its child epics? How does this break down? And some information about those. We're able to rank these so we can actually give prioritization through ranking in the backlog. We're also able to customize this view for ourselves. We can choose to view certain columns. So we can choose different fields for different work items, as you see here. And we can further filter this down through the apply filters or searching for a work item. I now want to jump down to the Epic layer to show just a bit more functionality. And for this, I'm going to go ahead and select my program again. Awesome. I like to show the epics specifically because there's a lot of really great fields to capture our epics that I think really lend themselves to that lean portfolio management. Looking at the epic here, anytime we select a work item in Jira Align, it gives us this pop-out screen, the details panel on the right side. Just some general information we're collecting. We can choose which PIs or program increments we are working with, assign that prioritization score, assign that estimate for each of those PIs. And at the bottom of each work item, you're going to see the related work items. So again, thinking of the top-down planning perspective, right from this portfolio epic, I can see how this breaks down into specific features and how those features are progressing. Also on the right-hand side, I get a quick snapshot of how are we working towards actually accepting this epic? How many story points have we accepted? Features, how many are in delivery? How many are accepted? How many are delivered here? Clicking through some of these other tabs, on the design tab, we see a lot of information about the design hypothesis. We are able to also create a custom intake form. So as you're doing the intake process around these epics, you can customize these fields, collect the information you need to make the right decision to actually move through this process. Here we also have the benefits tab. This is collecting a lot of information from the first couple of tabs, but we have even more fields. What's our future state and our desired outcome? What's our analysis summary here? Who are our sponsors? What personas are affected? And the value tab is one of my favorites. It shows us our overall value score and also shows us this value engineering hypothesis. We can add a hypothesis. We can collect information about how much do we want to spend on research, how much do we want to spend on building this, and we can either bet on it, choose to pivot, or persevere. There's a lot you can do with this value engineering piece of the tool. Jumping to the spend tab, this is, of course, where we do a lot of budgeting is at this epic layer. And the spend tab has a lot of great information, letting us know how much we are spending overall, how much budget we have remaining, how much are we spending by story, by feature. And we can click into each of these to see some more reporting around them as well. Back to our backlog, I also like to show that we can view the backlog in a couple of different views here. With this value stream view, you can create, again, that custom intake process and really utilize this Kanban view to move your epics throughout that process. And you can see quite a bit of information, including things like your PI progress up here as well. So this is a really helpful view. We see our customers really enjoying to really understand where each of their epics are in this process. Going back to the list view, I'm going to jump down one more time to the feature level. There is a capability backlog if you are using the solution layer. Most of our customers forego the capability layer, so we are going to jump down to the feature one here. But just know it exists. That's something that you're utilizing. Again, the backlog works in the exact same way. We can rank, we can expand these to see our stories. We can add in columns, etc. We can also see information like our program's PI velocity and what our feature estimate is. So we can keep track of, how's that load looking. I'm going to open up one of these features and show one of the other really nice parts of the tool that, again, helps us with that top-down planning, and that's the Y button. This Y button is contextual to the item that you have opened up, and it just gives you more information about why you are working on this item. So it's going to tell you about the feature itself, about its parent items, about its weighted shortest job first score, so that score for prioritizing. If there's a success measurement entered or a business case entered, it's just going to help us understand why this feature is important to the organization. And what's really great is this information can sync back to Jira. So at the feature level, we do sync with that Jira software epic, and that Y button can sync back so Agile team members can also see this information as well. Excuse me. All right. Now let's jump to one of the hottest pieces of Jira Align, which is the program board. And the program board is all about planning. So if you are working in a SAFe model, you're probably very familiar with the program board. If you are not, it is essentially a mechanism that helps our program, so our team of teams, each of the teams in that program, plan out their features for the next PI or program increment. And it also helps us identify dependencies during that PI planning process and objectives. Prior to the technological age that we are in now, this was done on a whiteboard or on a wall with a lot of sticky notes, a lot of tape, and a lot of string connecting a lot of different items. Now we are able to do this digitally, and I've seen a lot of different companies use various tools, whiteboarding tools, Confluence, etc., to carry this out. But what makes this so powerful in Jira Align is that it is live, meaning that as we start to accept our features, as we start to complete our dependencies, we will start to see this board change over time. So you will start to see this colorization that we see here, indicating work items that you have completed, work items that are in progress, work items that are at risk as well. So it is this live data source that helps us keep track of how are we actually executing our plan. All right. I want to walk through this in just a bit more detail, but this view does sometimes scare people who are new to it, and that's okay. It is a lot to take in. I always like to mention there are a couple other views here. You can choose this normal view. It helps you view a bit more information about the items and not just those shapes. For demo purposes, it is easier to use the small view, so I'm going to stick with that. There's also a legend in the far right as well. This little color wheel is a legend, very useful when you're new to the tool. Right. The program board is, of course, organized with rows representing the teams in the program and the columns representing the sprints or iterations in the PI. These little hexagons and diamonds here represent our objectives. And all of the rectangles represent our features. So our teams during PI planning are assigning these features to the iteration they believe they can complete them in after breaking them down into their stories. And the little chevron symbols represent the dependencies as well. So we're going to talk about the dependency module in just a moment. As you may have noticed, as I'm hovering over any of these items, it's showing me, or highlighting rather, the linked items. So in this case, I can see that feature 3422 is dependent on this dependency here, 2865. You may be able to see in the bottom corner of my screen, there's a little pop-up that tells me there are some planning issues, but I can also click on this, get a details panel, and right at the top, it's going to show me what my planning issues with this are. Shows me some even more information in my linked stories as well. So right here from the program board, we can tell a lot of information about our plan, what work items we are responsible for, who is dependent on us, who are we dependent upon, and how is that work being completed. Right. Next, I do want to jump into that dependency module of the tool. It is one of my favorite pieces of the tool. I think it's really useful for organizations. Dependency management is often hard to actually implement from what I've seen. So this module, I think, really lends itself to teams who are trying to get better at tracking those dependencies. So from this view, we are able to easily see items that we have requested, items that we need to complete that others have requested of us. We are able to select these, view their details panel. We are going to see first that we do have a little workflow here for dependencies. Is it not committed? Has it been committed to? Is it complete? It's going to show us some warnings if there are planning issues here. We can also say, as the requesting team, when do we need this by? The dependent team can then say when they commit to doing it by. And we can even see those team names down here and any of the assigned stories or information with this as well. While this is a very fantastic piece of the tool, I always like to mention that this module should never replace a conversation. We should always be having a conversation with people we need work from, people we are dependent on, prior to just inputting it into the tool. So once that conversation is had, everything is agreed upon, we can put it into the tool and carry out that workflow. There's also some helpful visualizations of dependencies. The wheel view is always a crowd favorite. It helps us understand the overview of our dependencies. Are they mostly committed to? Are they not committed to? And how many do we have? Do we have too many dependencies? We're also able to just select a team here, and it's going to show us a quick snapshot of that team's dependencies over here on the right as well. Also at the program level, when we're working with PI planning, we are also usually identifying risks, and there is a risk module within Jira Align as well. Risks are a work item in Jira Align. They have their own fields that we are able to fill out, and they do follow the Roam method in Jira Align. So once we input all of this information, we are able to actually select how we resolved this, provide a reason, and then down here at the bottom, it always tells us what each of those mitigation options are. So this really lends itself to that team understanding of how we are actually managing these risks. And there's also a Roam report, so you can see how you have actually mitigated those risks. Are we resolving most of them, owning most of them, accepting them? Is that what we should be doing, and how can we adjust? Okay. As you can see from just the menus of Jira Align, from the other visualizations that we've taken a look at, Jira Align really is this robust tool that helps us with our strategic planning, from our strategic goals down to our stories at our Agile team layer. Jira Align really does help us with this top-down planning and understanding the roll-up and connection of work throughout the entire enterprise. That is the first overarching use of Jira, the top-down planning. The second is the visualization of work. And so that's what we're going to look at, are some of the features of Jira Align, like roadmaps, the program portfolio and product rooms, and the robust reporting capabilities. But before we get to that, I want to take just a brief moment to tell you a little bit more about XVM, who we are, and what we do. Again, XVM is a Platinum Solutions partner with Atlassian. I like to sum that up by saying we're really a jack of all trades. We work with the Atlassian tools. We work with all of those. We have people who specialize in all of the tools. And these are our main services that we offer around those. So we do a lot of training. We do several free webinars every week. We have one Thursday at 11 a.m. Central. We also have some public classes that you can purchase tickets to around Jira and Confluence. And we do a lot of private training for groups as well. We also have consulting services. This is really a wide range of things. It can be implementation, migration, customization, configuring your tools with you, really anything to do with the Atlassian ecosystem, we bunch into this consulting service. And we also do have custom development capabilities. So we actually have a sister company that is a full stack development team that we can draw in anytime that the tools aren't satisfying you right out of the box. So we are able to create custom add-ons, custom interfaces, API connections. We're able to pull them in and really leverage their capabilities while we are also utilizing the Atlassian tools. Just a quick snapshot here of some of our upcoming items. We do have lots of free webinars. Our Jira Bootcamp and Confluence Bootcamp are paid classes that you can purchase tickets to. If you have any questions about any of these, please feel free to reach out to us. My email is on the screen. You can also always reach out to us via our website, xvm.com. We're always happy to discuss what opportunities we have with you and what may be a good fit. With that, let's go ahead and get back into our demo. Again, talking about really that visualization of work. So after we've gone through our planning of work, we've utilized our program board during our PI planning event, we've used our dependency module to make sure all of our dependencies are in place, we've got our risks logged, etc. Now it's time to actually execute that work. And as we're executing that work, we want to visualize that work. So we're going to take a look at some of the really highlights of that visualization in the tool now. I do want to reiterate that in this example, we are assuming that teams are working in Jira software. They have a lot of great reporting in Jira software, the Agile reports, the dashboard metrics they can gather, and countless add-ons in the marketplace that can help them get even more information out of their work, are all down in Jira software. So here in Jira Align, I'm going to start at the program layer, starting with the program room. Most of the layers of scale do have a room. It really is a dashboard, and it has a lot of widgets out of the box that are going to really help us understand how we are executing our work. So right at the top here, we have some really fast metrics. How many features, stories, and story points are planned, again, for the program and the PI selected in my context bar. Under that, we then see our PI, our program's PI load versus our velocity. This is great to look at after that PI planning event or even prior to PI planning to make sure we are overloading our program, making sure we are giving them that room to actually complete this work. We can then see a breakdown of individual team progress by points or by count. How is each team going? And usually when you hover over anything in Jira Align, it gives you an even further breakdown as well. We also have metrics around each individual team's load. What release vehicles are we completing in this PI? What are our risks and how are those looking? How many are open? How many are closed? How did we solve those? These little letters here tell us how did we actually resolve these. In the middle, we can visualize one of those checklists. The PI planning checklist is great to make sure teams are completing all of their steps throughout the PI planning event. We then see a little roadmap here of our sprints. We see how many story points are accepted that versus planned out of each sprint. And then the little line here does represent where we are now. Also a quick link to the program board to visualize this in a different way. Under that, we have a little bit of our backlog here. We are able to break these features down into stories. Should be able to. There we go. And also see their progress. And on the right-hand side here, we have overall progress, how much time is left in our PI, how are we going about completing our objectives, how many story points have been accepted, how many epics and features are accepted. We see our dependencies. What do those look like? Are they blocked? Are they committed to? Are they not committed to? And we also see our objectives here. And on each of these little widgets, there's also some quick buttons to view reports, to view that dependency grid I was just showing you, and to also add a new one as well. Another cool feature of this program board is up here, we see these little icons. These are the pictures for each team. So essentially a team logo. And if we click on that, it will filter the program board by that team. So I've seen a lot of programs utilize this functionality in something like a Scrum of Scrums meeting or a PO sync meeting to really just visualize the metrics for their individual team and present that to a group. Next, let's take a look at the roadmaps within the program layer here. So we do have some road mapping capability. The roadmaps are going to show us 2 layers of work. In this case, I'm visualizing the portfolio epics, but I can expand those to see their child items, so their features. And these little numbers even represent the story. So we can get a lot of information from this roadmap as to that hierarchy of work. We can also visualize objectives as these little flags and milestones as these little stars here. And we can actually control the coloring of this as well. So we can manually update this. This is great for presenting to executives. How are we going? Do a little red, yellow, green based on health here to give them a good understanding of how that PI is going towards completing your epics, your features, etc. There's lots of configuration options around under the view configuration here. So you can turn on certain columns, you can turn on unplanned work items, you can choose what to group by, what to visualize by as well. There's sorting options, filtering options, lots of capabilities under this roadmap. Now let's jump up a layer and go ahead and look at our portfolio room. Oops, that's the enterprise layer. There we go. So again, the portfolio room serves as a dashboard for the portfolio layer. Here it's telling me I need to select a portfolio in my context bar. Jira Align is often helpful with reminding you what selections you actually need to make in that context bar, but if you're ever looking at a screen and you're not seeing the work item you expect to, just remember that context bar is there. You may need to reset it or make a different selection. And if there's any admins on the call, that context bar also impacts admin screens. So if you're not seeing some of the admin functions or information that you're looking for, also check your context bar. All right. Now that this is loaded, we can take a look at what we can see at the portfolio level. We do have information about our theme progress throughout our program increment. How are each of those themes faring? What status are they in? We also see our program increment roadmap. Where are we at in that program increment? We can select multiple program increments to view them here. What's our progress? If we hover over this, it even tells us the number of story points accepted versus planned. And again, we see our backlog here of our epics or our standalone features as well. And hovering over these can give us even more information. On the right, we also see our PI progress. If I were to select a couple of these, we'd be able to compare PI information here and how much work we have planned. There's multiple tabs to the portfolio room. So under resources, we can actually see some more information, our estimated effort distribution here. Again, our product and program increment roadmap and our backlog. And then we see the velocity for each program and their excuse me, progress throughout the PI or PIs selected. There's also a financials tab. Again, at the portfolio layer, we're often providing a budgetary information around our portfolio epics. So here we have some budgeting information. We can see the total funding for each program, and we can see our theme budget variance, as well as quickly get to the investment versus spend report. This is always a big report at the portfolio layer. The last room I want to show you is the product room. Again, the product area of the tool isn't always needed for all organizations, but it can be really useful if you are needing to get that more product-centric view. We can create products here. We can associate our features to those products and then see a lot of great information here about our effort versus value. How does this product vary across the themes? What's our delivery look like? And how are we delivering our features across that program as well? All right, or that program increment as well. The last view we will take a look at here, and then we'll get to our Q&A, is the reports section. So there's lots and lots of reports in Jira Align. We don't have time to go through all of them, obviously, but I like to go ahead and just scroll a few times. I've scrolled maybe 4 times on my mouse, and I'm just down to the E's and F's in the reports. So there's dozens and dozens of reports out here. I do find that they are pretty comprehensive and usually do show the metrics that scaled environments are looking for. Of course, if you're looking for even more, there's that Enterprise Insights add-on. There are some quick filters over here on the left for these reports. We can also use this search bar. I will say this is a AI feature of the tool, so it is expecting you to ask a question. If you're looking for just a specific term, I sometimes find it easier to just do Control F on the page and then type in something like scope and just go through the reports this way. But I will go ahead and jump up here. And are we going to finish this program increment on time? This is one of the most useful reports, I think, in Jira Align. It's this program increment burn down by feature and by story, and we also have burn ups. On a lot of the reports, you're also able to do the drill down, and this shows us just even more information. So this is looking at specific programs. We can view it by theme, and on each of these programs, we can also click View Teams to see an individual team burn down as well. So just a lot of value you can get out of these reports in Jira Align. Right. All right, well, that wraps up the live demo portion of the webinar. Hopefully this has been helpful for you in showing you a bit more about Jira Align. If you feel that you need to, if you are quite sure, I guess, if Jira Align is right for you after this demo, please do reach out to us. We are always having conversations, helping organizations understand if Jira Align is the right tool right now, or if other Atlassian products may be a better fit, and helping talk about that implementation as well. With that, we are going to now get to the Q&A portion. If you haven't already, please put your questions in the Q&A panel in Zoom, and we will get to those. Hopefully we'll have time to get to all of them. All right. Can we use Reset API for sync, or are we limited to the T-Rex bidirectional functionality? Right now, it is mostly just that T-Rex bidirectional functionality or utility as we are syncing. So as we make updates in one tool, it syncs back to the other. That is the current state. They are constantly making updates to the API though, so it would not surprise me if we start seeing a bit quicker of an update between the tools over the coming months. Okay, so various level we have at the theme and epic. Are these like issue types? And if yes, can we rename them? So yes, they are like issue types. Technically in Jira Align, we call them work items, but it's basically an issue type. You can rename those. There's also some other layers above the theme that we can plug in. Let me go to the strategy room here. So there are a couple of layers of goals that we don't have turned on in this instance, but you could have, you could rename any of these layers essentially, like long-term goals could be renamed yearly goals. There's a couple more in here too. But yes, you can totally rename these. They are all essentially a work item. They do all have their own fields. So there's different fields on each work item. We can toggle those on or off. Some we can choose to make required. There's not as much custom field functionality in Jira Align as there is in Jira software, but I do find that usually the out-of-the-box fields really do collect the data that are the customers I've worked with are looking for. So it is pretty robust in that nature. I always like to mention, which I think I skipped over it, but with epics, one thing that is sometimes a little confusing is that Jira software has the idea of an epic and Jira Align has the idea of an epic that is different. It is a layer above that. If you're working in data center, Jira software data center, you can actually rename your Jira epics to actually represent features and then just have your portfolio epics here in Jira Align, or you can rename them here as well. And that is a coming update to cloud too. Okay, so does the configuration reflect all programs across the tool, or can it be mapped to dedicated programs, only Jira, similar to how the Jira world has schemes? This is a great question. Jira Align is a little bit of a different beast than Jira software. So with Jira software, of course, we have lots of customization options available. When we get to Jira Align, we are talking more of a standardized process. So there is some variation we can have across portfolios. When it comes to the same programs within a portfolio, though, they need to be standardized. So whenever we work with customers, that implementation phase, or sorry, that configuration phase, the first part of that is almost always actually configuring Jira software to standardize things like workflows, fields, permissions, etc. So that as we're syncing to Jira Align, we have that standardization. So the connector between the two knows how to actually handle that information. So there's a lot of nuances within it, but for the most part, we do look at standardizing across those programs. All right, let's see here. How customizable are the reports in Jira Align? So the reports aren't highly customizable. It is limited in Jira Align. Of course, we do have some of those options like I showed you of drilling down into some reports, some we can sort differently, etc. But if you're looking for even more customization capabilities, that Enterprise Insights add-on is what I would recommend leveraging. And then that can be connected to a BI tool of your choice, like Power BI, for example. Let's see. How good is Jira Align at catching errors? So Jira Align really has a lot of capabilities around catching errors. For example, if we go back to the program room here, one of the options on the little, one of the options on the program view on the backlog here is to actually show you misaligned items. So items, excuse me, items here that maybe don't have a sprint or are scheduled for a sprint out in this PI, but have a different PI, have a feature outside of this PI. It's just going to show you anything that is misaligned here. Additionally, if we go to the backlog, one of the options there is to visualize the orphan objects, which can be really helpful. So this orphan objects button is going to show us, once we make our selections here, it's going to show us items that don't have an estimate, that don't have a theme, that don't have a parent, that don't have a release if we're utilizing that functionality, and don't have a product if we're using that functionality. This is a great way to make sure that we have items properly parented, make sure that they are estimated. And again, once we filter down by PI, if you're going into a new PI, this is a great way to just double check that you have your data as up to date as possible before those teams start that PI planning event. It always makes it go much smoother. All right. The last thing I'll show for this is the program board. So the first row and column of the program board is going to be the unplanned sprint. And sorry, the last row here is the unassigned. So once you get done with PI planning, this is a great way to make sure, did we plan out all of our features that we expected to? If we didn't, why? Do they need to be assigned to a different PI? Do they need to go back to the team to flush out a bit more? It's a good signal of lingering items after that PI planning event. And of course, there's all the planning warnings here as well. So any item that's orange or red means there's some planning issue. And then it does show you, as I demonstrated earlier, what those are up at the top. Okay, is it possible to see the critical path in Jira Align and also see what happens when a project disrupts the critical path, how the timeline shifts and so on? So as far as critical path, it doesn't show the critical path in the way that something like advanced roadmaps does. Of course, we do have the roadmap functionality where we are able to, excuse me, visualize our epics. There's lots of customizations you can make here to view just features, etc. And there is an MVP field, so minimum viable product, that usually signifies the critical path in the tool. And then we can filter by that as well. So, and then as we make changes, it will throw up any planning errors with that. All right. Looking at the program board seems overwhelming. Do teams actually use this to plan? Yes, they do. And I agree, at first, it is a very overwhelming view, especially this one that is in the middle of a PI. So first, whenever you start a PI, all these items are going to be colorful. They're all going to be gray, and they're all going to be over here in this unplanned sprint column. And they may even be in the unassigned story column. So as you are going through that PI planning, that's when it starts to populate the board. Once the PI starts, that's when we start to see the coloring. So I do think considering that makes it a little bit less overwhelming. And there's also a couple of customizations that you can do. So first, in the view here, there is the normal view. This will show you a bit more information until you get used to the shapes. It shows you the item number as well as the first part of the summary. There's also some options we can do with the extra configs here. So here we can actually toggle items on or off. So based on the type of feature that they are, do we want to show the objectives, show the dependencies? We can filter by specific epics or themes, etc. That can help you, as you're executing, really locate items quickly. Also, during PI planning, what's really useful is you can update the team rank, and this only updates your view. I always recommend for teams who are starting PI planning to come in here and rank your team to the top. If I'm on the Tiger team, or let's say the Houston team here, I don't want to have to scroll down every time. So I'm just going to drag that up to the top for that mobile program, which I think is down here. And this can show multiple programs if you expand them as well. So now I have that Houston team up here at the top. So move your team to the top. It's just going to affect your view. It's not going to impact anyone else's. You aren't being inconsiderate to anyone by doing that. It can really help you focus on what you are trying to do and not be overwhelmed with all of the other information. The last thing I'll answer is a question we always get, or often get, at the end of a demonstration like this, which is, what else should we consider before we start? And the number one thing I can say is it always helps if you define your process, you document that process, and you publish it somewhere that is accessible, like the Jira Align checklist or the Confluence or a Confluence space or a SharePoint space, wherever your users can access it. Documenting that process helps people understand it, helps them understand how they should use the tool. And after that, just go for it. Let users test it out, help them understand how the tool works. And if you need any help with that, we are always available to have that discussion with you and see if we are able to help you in your implementation of Jira Align. All right. Thank you very much for joining us today. If you have any lingering questions after this webinar, do feel free to reach out. And I hope you all have a great rest of your week.